Hello out there. Welcome, everybody. My name is Daniel, and I'm here on behalf of AutoCrit. We're so happy to be part of the AuthorTube Writing Conference 2024, and I'm here to be sharing your ultimate writer's assistant from draft to polish, a live AutoCrit demo. So I'm here to show you how our wonderful tools, our whole suite of tools, spectrum of tools, inside the writer's desk is going to completely transform your writing experience. And what you're going to find is when creating these tools, we have really tried to keep in mind. We've tried to keep in mind your processes. It's not our goal in life to try to make you have to rethink the way you write or conform to a system that we developed. Our goal is to provide tools to help you with the systems that perhaps you already have developed or improve upon those. So you can really use our tools no matter where you are in the writing process. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to dive in here into AutoCrit. Hold on here. Got to hit a button so I can share my screen. Just one moment. And we'll dive right in here. All right. And please keep the questions coming as we go. I'll keep an eye on those. So this is our main AutoCrit page. You can see we have a lot going on. We have the community events. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about those today, but we have those happening all the time because it's our goal not only to provide these wonderful tools, but to provide you that one-on-one feedback, that community where you could find potentially partners or we bring on best-selling authors. We do a little bit of everything around here. But I wanted to point out the writer's desk. That's right here in the center. And what you'll see is we immediately have story ideas, write, analyze. So you can start this process. You can start working with AutoCrit no matter where you are. So let's imagine I'm at the ideation stage. Let's use a fancy term, right? I haven't quite figured out what I'm doing yet. Well, that's where our story builder comes into place. So the story builder allows you to work with the system and organize your thoughts. So you can start with nothing or you can start with a lot of ideas. So let's imagine that I actually have an idea for a character. And I want to write a story about a cactus who, oh, sorry, I need to spell cactus, who doesn't make friends easily, right? And I'm not exactly sure what to do this. I just like this idea of this lonely cactus, right? Well, if this is all I had, I could ask the story builder to give me suggestions. So if I went down to the antagonist and I hit the little generate button, it's going to use that cactus beginning. And now I have Thorn. Thorn is an older prickly saguaro cactus, and he sees the protagonist as a young upstart. Okay, maybe I like that idea, maybe I don't. Actually, let me go back. I exited out of there for a second. Hold on, let me hit that button again. So let me scroll down here. So let me try this again. Let me say I'm going to pick as a story premise, I would like a mystery set in a rural town in Maine. So if I go down to the world building now and I hit like general flora and fauna, it's going to give me suggestions based on Maine, right? Pine grown mave, right? And so it gives me all of these different ideas. Now, what I like about these ideas, I can keep. What I dislike about these ideas, I can delete. And all of the ideas that are thrown into these different buckets are going to build on each other. So the more buckets that I have filled out in advance, the more I will have for the story builder to work from. So I could myself fill out my story premise, my world building, my character building, and then when I get down to the beat sheet level, it would have all of that information. I could even go so far as to write even my beat sheet. And I could use this whole thing as just a way to get ideas and to organize my thoughts, right? And again, it's up to you. Do you want to get ideas from the story builder? Do you want to just use it as a way to organize your thoughts? It is all up to you, however you want to use it. Now, if there's something that I like, let me see if I can find one here. So I had a cactus. I like cactus. So I had a cactus who could see the future, right? Um, actually, hold on. Let me go ahead and find this. Yeah, so this was actually uh, a Regency romance, Elizabeth Whitmore and Lady Caroline Harrington and all of that. So if I went down here to the beat sheet, I can go ahead and I can select romance if I want. Of course, I could make it a mystery or horror. And then it's going to give me a list of beats of buckets that fit that style. So it's going to give me the meet cute. It's going to give me bait. I don't have a meet cute currently, so I could get an idea if I'd like it and hit that button and then see what the meet cute is. Perfect. They have a unique meaning in a hidden library. Sure, why not? So if I like all of these ideas, I can actually import them into my document as well. I can hold on to them. And so that way I can keep them at my side as I progress through the story. So the way I would do that is I would hit these three dots and then I would link it to a file. So if I go into the linked file, this was a cactus walking through the desert, and I go to the fiction story builder, you can see this linked file. And this is a desert story with cactus, a talking cactus that can predict the future. I told you. I often like to pick cactus when I do these demos. Look it over here. Oh, I see. How confident can you be that the trees listed for Maine are accurate and it might do the wrong thing? It is true. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily. This is definitely great for fiction writing. If you're doing like historical fiction or something that's really strict, it's possible that it could kind of give you a weird result. So it's always good to double check in the same way that, if you're talking to somebody else for ideas, you might want to double check as well. Now, you'll notice that when I opened this main file, right, this is the kind of the main living space where your document can live and you can actually type the actual story, right? You'll notice that I can keep the fiction story builder right here on my right as I type. So I could be writing all kinds of different things like the cactus bumps into a wise old coyote named Dave, right? And then I can go over here and I can make sure that my relationship character is a wise coyote named Dave, right? So again, you can use this as a way to get ideas, of course, if you get stuck, but you can also just use it as a wonderful tool to keep yourself organized. And these two files are going to be tied together. So, if I save, I will have all of my builder ideas as well as I have all of my text here on the left-hand side. Now, as I'm typing, there's a few other tools I have. I could be saying, the cactus feels happy. And then I could think to myself, and I'm like, that's not particularly great writing, right? I'm just telling it. I'm not really dramatizing it. So let me get some inspiration on that. So if I put my little insertion point at the cactus feels happy and I go to inspiration and I go to change the mood, well, I can look at happy and then I can get ideas. I could say, playful, cheeky. And now when I generate ideas, it's going to give me some ideas on the right-hand side that gives me ideas of what could happen, right? As they exchange stories under the warm desert sun, sure. Dave's tail wagged with amusement. Sun painting golden streaks. It's a great way to have ideas for the scene and how things can make you happy or not, right? Of course, if you don't use any of the ideas, they're just going to get lost. They're going to get completely cleared out. So, you want to make sure you copy them to a note, or you go ahead and type on the left-hand side what you're inspired by if you want to go ahead and use those ideas. Yes, yes, everything is in one place. That's really our goal in life, right? It's our goal to keep it all in one spot so you don't have to keep going around and using different pieces of software, right? Because we've been there. That's what we used to do, right? And as we were like, oh, I wish I had that tool. It's like, oh, let's just add that into this, add that in. Now, another great way to keep yourself organized is our note card system. So I'm going to go ahead and hit the note cards, little sticky note in the upper right. So you'll notice here I have my little note. Cactus is 3 feet tall, right? I put that in because, I wanted to remember it. Now, I didn't actually have that written here yet, but now I can maybe add, his best friend is a coyote or whatever it is that I want to keep track on. This is another way of creating information for yourself. You can even add a note and you could put in inspirational pictures because if I hit save and I make this bigger, I could go ahead and insert an image. Of course, I could also just Control C, Control V. That's like the easiest way, right? Put it to your clipboard, throw it in there. And then you could even have little pictures on here on the side if you like to draw or get images, as inspiration, just excitement for yourself, perhaps, just to keep yourself motivated. You can keep all of that over here on the note board. And you can even have multiple note boards. So perhaps I would make this note board specifically the characters, right? And then I could have a whole other note board that could be something like, I don't know, the settings, right? And then I only have to have open what I need at any given moment. Again, it's just a great way to keep yourself organized. We even have alternate forms of noteboards. We have a whole timeline view. Don't have too much time to explore this in depth, but as you can see, it creates a grid that you can do on, columns, you can do rows, you can change the colors. All of this is highly customizable. You're not limited to 4 columns or 3 rows. You can make this as long or as big as you want. And again, there's so many different ideas. You might do it by character and then have each scene what happens, or, maybe certain dynamics. People have their own systems. And again, our goal isn't going to try to make you conform to our system. Our goal is to give you a space so you can work with, whatever sort of system you like. If you like the hero's journey, if you like kind of more of the snowflake method, whatever it is, we should have the tools there for you as well. Just trying to keep up with the comments. I think we're doing all right here. Anyway, so yeah, you'll keep writing. What about, if you get stuck on a word or something like that, and you're like, you know what, wise, I don't know about wise. I don't know if that's really the option I want. You can go over to the thesaurus, and this is actually a smart thesaurus. So it should look at the context of the sentence. It shouldn't just give you a laundry list of every synonym that could possibly have to do with wise. So it has knowledgeable, experienced, astute, intelligent. And, if you like astute, you can go ahead and click that. And now it moved it right in. And of course, it'll give you more options. It'll refresh if you want to, keep thinking about it, for sure. So yeah, that's a great little tool. We also have our dictation feature, so you can dictate your words. You don't have to type them out if that's not the way that you like to write. We have that feature built in as well. Another feature that we have that you might have noticed is as I was adding words, you can see here, it tells me words that I'm typing. It says I have 15 added today. Now, you'll notice it's in red. This is because I haven't hit my daily quota. Now, what is my daily quota? Well, my daily quota is 1,000 words. I'm nowhere near that. I'm not writing at a NaNoWriMo pace right now, just writing a couple sentences. So, yeah, let's notch that down. What if I did 13 words? Oh, look at that. It's green. Yay. Obviously, I wouldn't recommend doing that to mess up your daily goal, but it's fun to have that daily goal, and then you can see that little green. And it's also rather subtle, right? It's not really in your way. In fact, if you don't like having word counts because you find it distracting, you can get rid of them, and then you can bring them back. So maybe you just don't like seeing those numbers while you're writing. Fair enough, right? Another tool that a lot of writers like are timers. So we have 2 timers. We have a sprint timer, right? So for those of you who like to, do those ride or die sprints, let me go ahead and just hit it for 0.1 minutes, so it's 6 seconds. If I hit play, you can see here it counts down those 6 seconds, and then it's going to turn green. Bing! And again, it's pretty subtle. It's not too obnoxious there as it's counting down. You can kind of ignore it. We also have the Pomodoro method. So Pomodoro is the concept that, for creative types, it can be helpful to go back and forth between writing and rest, and writing and rest, and writing and rest. So you get to decide. Again, it's your system. How many minutes do you want to write? How many minutes do you want to break? So let's say, I'm going to do it for 6 seconds. You wouldn't get a lot done this way, but again, just for demonstration purposes, I'm going to hit play. So you're going to see it's going to count down those 6 seconds, and then it's going to have these little Z's, and it's like, green. Okay, I can rest, whatever, and then it's like, oh, time's back up, and now I've got to get back to work, right? So lots of ways to keep yourself accountable, and the accountability word counts go even further than that. You can track your progress over time. You can create a whole goal for your book and so many more, but I don't want to spend too much time talking about that right this second, because I want to show you another great feature. So we've gotten past the ideation stage, right? You've come up with your ideas, you brainstormed, you figured out, or you're just writing, you're pantsing as you go, and you're keeping track of your ideas as you go, if that's your system. So let's imagine that we have a finished book. I'm still looking. Okay, I'm just checking to make sure I haven't lost anybody. Okay, so what if we have a finished book? We all have a finished book. Yay! We're going to look at an example of a finished book. Hold on here. I'm going to need to stop sharing so I can bring up another screen. Yes. Ta-da! Look at that. Just like magic. It's like those cooking shows where they put the thing in the oven and it comes out. It's like poof. All right. So this is actually The Time Machine. So it's a classic piece of literature. All right. So we're going to take a look at, we're going to imagine, just for the sake of an example, that we wrote The Time Machine, right? Congratulations to us, right? So what would we do at this point? Well, of course, the first stage in the editing process, once you've created your first draft, once you've written the end, is to start working on developmental editing, right? So the fiction analyzer is our big tool for that. It's to really help you see what you actually have written. Now, this is really helpful for those of you who like to pants, right? And I think Catherine spoke a lot about this earlier today, where if you just kind of go with it, if you just have an idea and you fly with it, you're not really working from an outline. Instead, what you often do is you reverse outline once you've actually written your draft, right? And so we're going to go to the fiction analyzer now. Now, it usually takes a few minutes to run. I'm not going to pretend that it's instant, although it's very quick. Just a few minutes, much faster than, sending it to a beta reader and getting it back. And it's going to give us some analysis of what happens. So the first thing it's going to do is give us a synopsis. It's going to give us a synopsis of every chapter. It's going to tell us what happens in the chapter. It's going to tell us what the conflicts are. This is, of course, really helpful if there aren't really any conflicts in the chapter. It's not usually the best, right? You want to have some conflicts, or perhaps there are conflicts in there you didn't really intend. The analyzer is going to act like a reader. It's going to act like somebody who isn't that familiar with the work. It's not going to know what you intended to pull off. And it's going to just guess, just like a knowledgeable developmental editor will, right? It'll be an educated guess, but it's going to try to surmise, what were you trying to pull off, So it's when you get to things like foreshadowing events, which is a little bit later, that comes into play. Let me go down there for a second. So, for example, in the foreshadowing event, it says the skepticism and disbelief expressed by some characters towards the concept of time travel foreshadows potential conflicts or challenges related to this technology. And of course, that is indeed true. That is something that happens in the short story. Now, what if thank you. Yes, the analyzers. Yeah, it's a fantastic tool. I may be a little bit partial to it because I was on some of the development team on it, but you know. But you know, what if you actually got something that was weird, right? What if the analyzer said, I wonder if perhaps there's a monster lurking in the woods because there's a strange sound that people keep talking about, and I don't know what it is, right? Doesn't that mean they're going to find out later? Again, that's helpful to know because that might be an unintended promise that you made to the reader, right? We all do that sometimes, right? We all get that feedback where the beta readers are like, I want to know more about this. Like, why didn't you explain that? So the analyzer should help you get ahead of that. It should help you see the promises that you've made. What are the potential things that audiences are going to view? I think I might have dropped out a bit. I'm sorry. Um, all right, so let me go back here. There's also contradiction events, right? So contradiction events is interesting because a contradiction event is not something that it knows what's coming later in the story. So it's going to be based completely on what occurs in that chapter. So, you know, if you in that chapter say a character has blue eyes and then later they have green eyes, well, it's going to be like, no, that's not right. However, it's not going to know if in chapter 25 you say they have green eyes, right? But again, it's very helpful because those would be the most obvious contradictions that an audience member would know about, right? So again, if you set up in a chapter that they're on the top of a building and they're having a big fight and then somebody, you know, walks out to the parking lot and you haven't established how they got down the stairs, that's the sort of thing it might notice. It's like, well, wait a minute, you didn't tell me how they got down the stairs. That doesn't make any sense. All right, another thing that you have here is the plot thread tracking. Again, this is where it's going to tell you if perhaps uh, you have a unintended setup, right? You have an unintended, unanswered question. You've set up the fact that there's some looming threat, and then you just forget about it. It's always great to look at the plot thread tracking. And in just a minute, I'm going to show you how it all comes together. Right now, we're just looking at the chapter by chapter. The last piece, which is really helpful, is the genre analysis. So in the genre analysis, what you get to see is what it surmises the genre is based on the material. Right? So again, it doesn't actually know, like, from you what you would do. It doesn't know from you, you know, whether you're not telling it, oh, this is supposed to be sci-fi. Is it a good sci-fi? It's just looking at what's on the page, which is really helpful because, of course, if it looks on the page and it says, this is clearly a romance, well, that's not great, right? And when you're not writing a romance, if you're writing a romance, that's fantastic. But if you're writing a sci-fi, you would want it to go ahead and say so. All right. I'm going to keep going because in the other tab, so we have chapter tab, and then we have the overall. So in the overall tab, we have the premise, right? So the overall premise of the story, and then it gives you ideas of where it thinks that it does a particularly good job of fulfilling the promise of the premise. Okay, so here we have chapter 2, chapter 4, chapter 8, chapter 14. It's a nice spread, right? Congratulations to us for, you know, writing a masterpiece like Time Machine. Not a surprise that that's well written, right? But again, if this is something where if it feels like all of the times it's excelling at fulfilling the promise of the premise is like chapter 2, 3, 4, and then you kind of fall off, you know, you might be struggling a little bit. You might be a front-loaded book. We see potential conflicts not explored or conflicts needing improvement. And here's where the story analyzer is just tasked to give you feedback. So don't panic about this, right? Sometimes it's going to say, Well, it is going to say it needs improvement, but that doesn't mean that you have to listen to it. It's just going to say, if you wanted to make improvement, here's some things that you could do. Now, uh, as Leonardo da Vinci once said, or at least supposedly said, art is never finished, only abandoned, right? So you can always keep polishing, you can keep editing and all of the things. So this is just a great way to get ideas in case that is what you wanted to do, right? In case you actually wanted to keep going, but for for your intents and purposes, you might look at some of the needs improvement and come to the conclusion of, no, it's fine actually. It's exactly what I want right now. Oop, excuse me. All right, let's keep going. By the way, feel free to ask questions. I can see the chat, so let me know if anything is not making sense. So unresolved threads. Again, there might be unresolved threads that are intentional or not. Like, for example, in the time machine, it says the ultimate fate of humanity remains ambiguous. I think that's intentional, right? So that's okay. If you did not want that to be the case, though, if you wanted a clear cut, this is the end, no, that you'd want to go back and you'd want to write that ending and make that clearer to the audience. Theme analysis. I think this is so helpful because a lot of times when I tell authors find your theme, they're like, well, I don't know, I just write, I just I just do it. I don't know what I'm actually, because you have to psychoanalyze yourself when you're coming up with a theme. You have to think about, like, what makes me tick? Why am I so fascinated by this? And things like that. What am I really getting at? So the theme analysis is great because you don't have to do all that. It can psychoanalyze you for you, and it can tell you what in the world. Yes, I'm drooling. It's really, really cool. It really is. All right. And then we have genre conformity. So, this tells you, how did you fit in with the genre, right? Did you kind of meet the audience expectations? Did you do a lot of weird things that were abnormal? And again, this might be a difficult work for the analyzer to completely what you want to say, latch onto, because perhaps you're sort of playing a lot of genres, right? And so if it says, well, it has elements of this and this, I can't quite identify it, and you're like, yes, that's what I want. Perfect. But a lot of us do want to kind of hit a bullseye, right? Because we're trying to rank on Amazon or whatever it is, meet the audience expectation. And so when it's giving you a tried and true, this is what it is, and you've hit it, it's a great pat on the back. It's fantastic. Really helpful. Okay, so the next tab, I know, we have a lot to cover. The next tab is characters. So it gives us a whole analysis of our character. The character of the time machine, is his flaw lies in the initial underestimation of the dangers associated with time travel and perhaps an overconfidence in his own scientific abilities. Fair enough, right? And it says it is a transformational character arc because it is initially filled with excitement. He embarks on an adventure that profoundly changes him beyond just validating his intellectual pursuits. And it tells you the pivotal moments when this happened. Again, it's really helpful because you don't necessarily want all of your character moments sort of crammed together, right? So again, not surprising because the Time Machine is an excellent piece of literature. It is spread around, right? Chapters 4 through 8 is a bit of a transformation. Chapter 12, big pivotal moment towards the end of this. This is a novella. It's only 32,000 words, as you can see. Now, we often have questions. It's like, well, what if I write something that's Brandon Sanderson, kill a child if it falls on them kind of size book? You're fine. It can still do that, right? It'll still analyze all of the things. The only limitation we currently have right now is that each chapter can only be 10,000 words long. So if you write really long chapters, you might need to, just for the sake of the analyzer, split them up. But 10,000 words is a pretty long chapter, so it does meet most author expectations. If you write short stories, you don't have to have any chapters at all. Keep in mind, if you are Keep in mind that if you are writing a short story that's longer than 10,000 words, which that's a pretty long short story, that's kind of more like a novella. It will need to be split up. Again, even if the intention for the audience is that it's not split up, you'll just have to split it up for the analyzer. So that's really the only limitation we have. It's not very much. All right. Uh, let's look up. So we have inconsistencies. So this looks at the whole work and it tries to find some inconsistencies throughout. Some of them, again, might be intentional, it might be subjective, or it might be based on the circumstances, right? So it's funny because it says one inconsistency arises when considering how well prepared the time traveler seems for some aspects for survival versus how ill prepared he seems basic needs like food or shelter. All right, and then it says, while this may underscore human adaptability, I can't talk, facing unexpected challenges, it sometimes feels incongruent. So it's going to be picky, but that's what we want, right? We want it to be picky. It doesn't mean every time it points out something like this, we got to panic and burn the whole thing down and stuff. No, no, no. But it is helpful advice, right? It's helpful feedback. We can take it as it's intended. It'll give us the archetypes. Now, these archetypes are the archetypes that we talk about a lot in AutoCrit. So you may not be familiar with the specific terminology. If you aren't, you can hit the I button and it will bring up a window that will explain what the archetypes are. Okay, so you can see that little I. It'll go ahead and it'll bring that up and it'll give you an explanation. So we have antagonist, relationship character, distraction character, support character, opposition characters, etc., etc. And then it'll give us character analysis, and it'll tell us, what it thinks about these different characters and whatnot. It doesn't quite as much as it does about the protagonist, but it does give you a lot of information in terms of what their arc might be like and things like that. Now, one question we often get is, what about if I have multiple points of view? Like romance, often you switch from, two perspectives because people are falling in love with each other or something like that. What the system is going to do is it's going to determine who your protagonist is based on your plot. It's going to determine who is the most important driving character towards success in the plot, and it'll assign that the protagonist. Now, if that's not the typical framing you use for the term protagonist, it might take some getting used to. But I think it does make a lot of sense from a mechanical sense, right? And again, the terminology being used by the system is just to give you these results in this way, right? You don't have to, if you disagree and you think that you have two protagonists, that's how you like to talk about it. We're not going to ask you to change, but the system is going to specifically say protagonist, and often that second character gets another role. It's relationship, support, something like that. Right? Or antagonist, maybe for writing a thriller and the other person is the villain or something like that. All right. Okay, so we have done our developmental edits now, right? So you can see here, it sits here on the right-hand side of the screen, so we can keep open the analyzer as we make edits. So let's imagine, I went down to a certain chapter 3, and I had a certain thing on the right-hand side I wanted to deal with. So, I could go down to chapter 3 over here, and then I could be making edits in here. While I have this open, I can expand and contract this. I can, close it while I make my edits and then bring it back up. Lots of flexibility here, right? And it all links together. It all stays together. So we've done our developmental edit. What about line editing, right? What about the actual telling of the story? Not what the story is, but the best method of doing so. So we have our summary report, which helps organize all these other reports. You may have noticed there's a lot of buttons up here I haven't hit yet. So let's go to the summary report. Currently, I'm comparing with general fiction. You have your option when you look at these word editing decisions to compare against different genres or authors. And what it's doing when you run these reports is it's just looking at their word choice versus your word choice. Now, this is an old work, so one place where it's going to be quite different than modern work will be pacing. Yep, probably because it's slower. Yes, look at the average words per paragraph, right? There are a lot more average words per paragraph in the time machine than modern fiction. Is that bad? Well, I mean, the Time Machine's a classic, right? But if you're writing for an audience now who's reading something, they're generally, whatever, they've got Kindle Unlimited and they're just consuming as much as they can in sight, right? And you want to get, you want to get their eyes on your books as well, perhaps. Do you want to stand out like that? Do you want to actually sound more like a classic piece of literature, or do you want to sound more like what they're accustomed to? Give them the white space they're expecting. So, you can keep that in mind as you're editing. And again, you can change this to whatever you want. So, I know, like Catherine talks about, from a content standpoint, she big epic fantasies, and it's kind of in the vein of George R. R. Martin. However, she doesn't want to give the audience a George R. R. Martin reading experience on the word-to-word level, right? She actually wants to give them more of a Brandon Sanderson experience. And so she actually compares herself to Brandon Sanderson because she wants the Brandon Sanderson readers who are used to that delivery to have an easy time consuming her work and transitioning over, because that's the fan base that she wants. So, there's something subconscious about a lot of these things, right? Down to the white space on the page, down to the adverbs. A lot of this just gives the audience I don't want to say like a mouthfeel. It sounds like I'm talking about wine or something, but you know what I mean? Like, it just gives it a vibe, right? And it makes it look like you're somebody that is just like the authors that they like. Of course, it's your original ideas, your original characters, and all of that, but it has that same kind of style. And there really are no right or wrong answers when it comes to these summary reports. If you were to change these numbers or change who you're comparing against, it will change the numbers, right? If all of a sudden I switched the time machine, I said I'm comparing to George R. R. Martin, it's not going to look as weird in terms of my average words per paragraph because he uses a lot more. And so what we generally recommend is for you to think about it from that standpoint. Think about, I want the kind of readers who like to read X, or I want my work to sound like X, right? I want it to be more similar to that. That's what the summary report and what these other reports I'm about to show you are the best at. So, if you love the thriller pace of like a lead child book, you're still writing fantasy, well, you can do that. You can set it to, I want to sound similar to lead child, and then what it'll do is it'll be like, yeah, you need like 8 words a sentence. I hope you're prepared for that. We're off to the races, right? Because that's that's the way the author writes. So it's very interesting. I kind of geek out about these numbers. I find them very fascinating. But our goal is not to overwhelm you, which is why we give you this lovely summary at the top. Now, some people expect that this number is eventually going to get to 100. It's not. How could it get to 100, right? If we're comparing against something, 100 would mean it's an exact match. No, no, no. It's going to be in the 80s, usually at most. If you get to the 90s, often it means you're flattening your style a little bit too much, right? You're starting to get samey or a little bit bland. Because some of it also comes into readability, is another reason why that score tends to go up as well. All right. I'm just looking at some of these comments. Oh, awesome. I'm so glad to hear that, Laura. We have a question about AutoCrit. AutoCrit is web-based. You can log into your device from any device on a web browser. So like if you go travel and you switch machines and you log on to another machine, if you log into the hotel lobby, you'll have all of your work as long as you just log into the same account, because it's all online for you. And of course, that means it's all auto-saving and all of that. Uh, so you don't have to worry about spilling coffee on your laptop and losing your book. It's all there in the in the AutoCrit database. All right. Let me scroll down here and let me look at some other things. Yeah, so you can see the average words per sentence. Average words per sentence, a whole lot higher for the time machine than typical, right? It's pretty bananas how much higher it is. If you think about the percentage, it doesn't seem like 5 words is very much, but 10 to 15, that's a big increase. It's you know not doubling, but it's a lot, and so it just feels different. And that's one reason why classic literature can feel different, is because of these word choices. All right, so we have dialogue. How many sentences have dialogue? Time Machine has a lot less dialogue than a lot of books. Something to keep in mind. This is a common question that early authors have. Do I have too much dialogue? And the answer you usually get is, well, it depends on what you want to do. But now you can see, depending on what you want to do, what that benchmark would look like. So do you want to sound like a typical romance author, in which case, oh, you actually have more than normal? Do you like that? Is that your style, or is it not? Yeah, absolutely, right? Yeah, it's very helpful. Again, because this gets specific, right? And other pieces of other analytical tools might just be like general best practices, which that's okay to a certain extent. And that's why, we have our AutoCrit score versus the direct comparison, is because we do like to keep in to consideration some of those best practices, right? But on the other hand, it's helpful just to see that direct comparison as well. All right, let's scroll down here. And I want to show you how we can go a little bit deeper. So look at adverbs. We actually have more adverbs going on in this story than we do in modern fiction. So that's very interesting. Let's run a report. Going to hit that button. And now it's going to send me into the document. Of course, these are the reports that are found over the header here. So if I went to strong writing and I went to adverbs, I'd get the same report. And let's look and see what is used more often in this work versus the database for general fiction. Presently. Not a surprise, right? Presently does sound old-fashioned, doesn't it? It would expect pretty much 0. Yep, it would, because it says removing 28 would put it into compliance with normal. There are 28 of them. Presently, just not a word you hear very often. But again, that would be something for you to think about. Do you care about it? Maybe it's a specific style. Maybe, again, you want to sound more old-fashioned, in which case you probably want to compare to a different author, right? But it's all up to you what you do with the feedback. So if I wanted to go through the presentlies and decide on a case-by-case basis, I can hit this little check mark, which would highlight all the presently, and then I can click the presentlies and I can see every presently in my document. And I can go down and I can go down the list and I can make a case-by-case decision. It's not a find all, replace kind of thing, right? That's generally not the best way of editing. I've done it, but it's not the best way. So yes, so another question that I get is, well, I have adverbs, but I'm using my adverbs in dialogue, so I don't really care because people tend to talk with adverbs, right? That's very conversational. I don't want to remove those, but it's hard to figure out where the dialogue is. Well, we have this nice little highlight dialogue button. Bing! And now we can see, oh, these are all the places where there's dialogue. Of course, in the time machine, it's almost all dialogue. Well, a lot of it's dialogue because he is recounting what happened, right? So that's going to throw it off. But that's something to keep in mind. This is a very This is one of the reasons why it has more adverbs than normal, is because it's intended to sound very conversational. It's almost like a diary. It's almost epistolary format because he's sitting there and he's describing everything, right? So again, that's something to keep in mind, right? That's something to keep in mind when you are writing. Filler words would be the same kind of thing. The filler words report is wonderful because it'll show you what your verbal tick tends to be. Now, we often have them when we talk, like the ums and whatevers. But when we're writing, they tend to be different. Varies, that's, justs. Look at all those that's. Lots of that's. Now, it's not going to tell you to remove every that because we do use fillers sometimes. But this actually tells us moving about 106 would again make it in compliance in terms of being similar to the data set. It would put it right on average. So you could go through all the that's bit by bit. You wouldn't have to do a find and replace all of them, but you can figure out when they're redundant because filler words can make a sentence very sticky. So let's see here. So you have, now it is very remarkable that this is so extensively overlooked. Of course, you can get rid of this, right? You could say, now it is very remarkable this is so extensively overlooked. But you might like the rhythm of the sentence and keep the that. Again, conversational, you might keep the that. But that's why it's helpful to go in piece by piece, right? And look at every individual that in context. And then, of course, you could go to all the varies. Or if you would prefer, you can select a bunch of them, check them off, and just scroll through the document and go through like your top unnecessary filler words, right? And you can look at them in and see where it seems like they're stacking. Like in here, maybe I'd want to go specifically in this paragraph and take a look. Of course, again, I'm not suggesting the time machine needs to be edited, except if you were trying to make it sound more similar to modern literature, right? Which means it'll move a lot quicker. One of the reasons why it was getting to those 15, 16 words a sentence versus 10 is because of some of this choice, right? Some of these choices in terms of the language and whatnot. And again, it doesn't actually automatically edit, right? It is an AutoCrit. It is not an auto edit. It also doesn't automatically write. It is again AutoCrit. It's not auto write. And so it's still, the power is in your hands. So another question we often have, especially in the world of technology with the way things are nowadays, is what would I have to declare to Amazon if I use these tools, right? And the answer is that everything that we use is in the Amazon definition of AI assisted. In fact, our reports don't really use large language models. It's a completely different process using algorithms. It's kind of complicated. I don't need to go into that, but it is not that kind of process anyway. But for some of the ideation and the analyzer, it's of course using some large language models. But again, it is not it is not generating anything for you. It's not generating paragraphs. It's not generating sentences. So you do not have to that is not something that Amazon requires you to announce at this time. Good question. Is any of the writers' writing used to train AI or anything like that? No, we do not. We're not creating a database of our users' writing in order to gain information off of it or anything like that. Yes. None of our tools create suggestions, and we do not use our members' work to train. No. No, and that's why, like, you get suggestions, you have to save them because they just go away. We don't have access to them, right? And so you have to use the ideas as you get them because otherwise, poof, they disappear like magic. Yes, do not take away your voice from your writing. No, yes, that is not what we want to do. It's all up to you, right? You might decide that your perfect benchmark is like in the 84, 85 range, right? Where it starts to be more of a steep climb for authors is when you're in the in the 70s or even the 60s or things like that, particularly if you're trying to attract a certain demographic. So I can give a personal example of this. So I was writing in the young adult market, and I was writing really fast, like Lee Child fast. And that really, if you look in comparison to like a Suzanne Collins, who was really kind of the author I was trying to attract with the author, with the audience, excuse me, she does not write that stark. She does not write that fast. And I did get feedback, and I was really new at this. I mean, this is like way back when I was like self editing. I didn't really know what I was doing. Anyway, so um, I would get feedback that they liked the story, but it was like breathless. It was like, I don't have time to breathe. And, that was me being like ruthless editor and like, gotta strip all of everything out that doesn't add to the story, strip everything out that doesn't earn its spot. And it's not like I needed to like add fluff, but there were times that I could have let the story breathe more. And I just wasn't doing that because I wasn't thinking of what the audience expectation was, right? Things like that. All right, I'm looking over here. Da, 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 da. Best beta reader ever. Doesn't expect me to write its way. Right. That is one wonderful thing about using a system like this that is, you could call much more objective. Obviously, there's a lot of subjectivity when it comes to creativity, right? And what this is doing, this is just giving you the numbers. It's just like, you use this word a lot more. Do you want to be similar? If you do, remove this much. If you don't, what's it going to do, right? It's not trying to boss you around. It's just trying to show you how you're differing, which can be really helpful. I know Catherine talked about the fact that she used whirling and twirling a lot, right? Like she likes to joke around about that. And she constantly had the person whirling and twirling their sword. Here, I can look at one of the places where that'll come up. Something like a phrase frequency, right? Phrase frequency is so helpful because you can have somebody, twirl their hair over and over again. It's like their nervous tick. But you can like overdo it. You could talk about them twirling their hair like 25 times in the book. And that might be silly. Here, we have the time traveler, the medicine man. Okay, those wouldn't be that bad. On the other hand, Palace of Green, things like that. None of these are things that seem like they would draw attention to themselves, right? When I wrote a book, it was like they nodded confidently. They nodded confidently. They nodded confidently. It's like there are other ways to nod. And, when you're writing a 70,000 word book, you can forget that you use that exact phrase and you would never know to look for it because you don't know. You don't see it. You have the blindness, right? And nobody might notice it, not specifically, but you've lost an opportunity to give more information, right? You've lost opportunity to get more creative. It is a wonderful tool. I love phrase frequency. Yeah, crazy useful. Repeated words, same kind of thing. I mean, there's so many different ones I could show you here. Initial pronouns, generic descriptions, redundancies, showing versus telling, right? The showing versus telling, of course, is words that indicate you might be showing versus telling. It doesn't actually know, it's going to base it on words that tend to be red flags for stuff like that. Well, if we're using names, right? Yeah, we often begin with a pronoun or a name, a proper name, but then we'll overdo it, right? It'll be like 75% of your book. I, and yeah, no, it's very helpful to see that as well. Now, the last thing that I wanted to point out is the publishing side. So this is a very new feature. It's like fresh off the presses. But now you can actually go straight from the AutoCrit Writer's Desk to formatting it for Kindle, for e-publishing, and all of that. So you can go and you can put in your book details, you can put in your book cover, your book title, your author, your description, your publisher name, your publisher image. If you have things like your ISBN, all of this, you just fill out this nice little form, And then you can have a copyright page, which it'll generate if you want to. If you don't, you don't have to have it. So all of this lives inside the writer's desk as well. And then, you can pick specific things about it. Do you want to change the fonts? You can have it to where you work in the writer's desk in a specific font, and then you actually export it in a different font. If that's what you want to look like, you like working this way, but the readers want it this way, you can do that. You can create your own dinkuses and headers and things like that. You can set the margins and the paper trim size and change things like drop caps or lead and small caps for the first sentence. It's all right here, all these publishing tools. Again, it's our goal to have everything in one spot, and we continue to upgrade, make adjustments in order to make that easiest for everyone. All right, I think I'm out of time for now, but I do have a few minutes here that I can answer any questions that anybody has about the AutoCrit Writer's Desk. Obviously, I didn't cover every specific tool in detail. If you ever get to a tool that you're confused about, you can always hit the little I button in the corner there. So I'm just pulling up showing versus telling as an example of this. So yeah, you can see this eye. It's kind of flashing. It's a little bit hard to see. It's in the upper right-hand corner, next to showing versus indicate telling. What that does is it will actually tell you, why is this report here? What does it do, right? Not just the technical side, but like why? Because we're not offended. You could be like, what? I don't understand. What is this report? What's the purpose, right? No, it's actually going to tell you what is the purpose, why an author might find this helpful. Of course, we always have our helpers here on the bottom right. You can see that little bubble. I have Catherine here helping out in the chat. She manages that desk a fair amount of the time. We have a great team on there, the bubble team, we call them sometimes, and they're always there to answer questions. We have a question, can you format your manuscript for self-publishing in e-format or paperback? Yes, yes you can. You can format for e-publishing, right. Print formatting is in the works. Yes, we really, like I said, we want to be the one-stop shop. That's our goal. And the nice thing is when you become an AutoCrit member, we automatically upgrade you to anything that we add. We don't have extra add-on tools. It's an all-inclusive thing, and that includes the wonderful clubs and member events that we have. Now, of course, we do have additional, just to give a little shout out while I'm waiting for some questions, we do have additional workshops and a wonderful Academy page that you can always check out as well. If you enjoyed Catherine's presentation earlier, we have a lot of presentations as well. Like we have some coming up about immersive settings, and we have one about writing a book series and things like that. Those are extra premium courses and things like that. But we have those live member events all the time for our members. All right. What about font choices? Within the writer's desk, we do have a few font choices. We have the typical like Arial, we have Allegria, Libri Baskerville. We even have one that helps dyslexic. We had that specific request for that accessibility, so we added that in. So you have the options of some sans fonts, some serif fonts, a few different options there. Can you save your back matter pages to be used in multiple books? I don't believe you can at this time, but that's a good idea. Yeah, no, that's a good idea. Like I said, the publishing side is pretty much right fresh off the presses. So, all right, so I'm going to go ahead and throw in the chat our little offer. You can join us right now. We have a special offer. It's only $15 to join us. So it's a great way to just hop on board, see what we're all about. It's when you do that, it'll open it up to yeah, anything. It's not a restricted access. It's a full access. So it's basically 50% off of that. All right. Well, thank you very much. You have a wonderful time on the rest of your conference. I'll see you around. Bye, everyone.